What's up, guys? It's Ian and Raphael joining me on Around the Ball HQ. Just wanted to hop on real quick to do a little podcast for the very first week of preseason football. It's officially back. No more
Officially.
rumors. Like, we don't have to worry about, well, rumors a little bit, but we don't have to worry about hoping and wishing football is back. It's finally here.
Yes.
So.
The hoping and wishing is for other things right now, but
Yeah.
but for actual football games, it's back, and it was good to tune in and watch some football games. And even though it's preseason, and I have, I've been juked already once before last year. We'll kind of get into that here at the beginning, but it's just good to see football and see some of these younger players that we're going to be talking about here in a few minutes.
Yeah, so first thing we'll start off with saying this year we're going to try our best, obviously hard, we're going to try our best not to get overly hyped around teams that haven't proved it. So we'll talk later about Mahomes and, some of those other teams that have made the playoffs last year, and they all kind of picked up right where they left off. But there's some teams we're hopeful, Steelers, Jaguars, that we can make some noise this upcoming year. But we're not going to overly hype it up until week one when we actually see the finished product on the field opening day. But in this offseason, Kenny Pickett was traded from the Steelers. Fans, some weren't happy with it. Some were. Some, I think Raphael knew. In the first episode, we talked about it. He knew he wasn't the guy, so it was okay to get rid of him and move on. What did you see from his preseason debut with the Philadelphia Eagles?
Well, I saw Hall of Famer preseason Kenny Pickett. No, I mean, I saw a lot of what I saw last year, which is he's able to, complete the short stuff. He's got actually his arm is decent. I mean, I will say, I think we talked about it. He's got a decent arm where he can do some sideline throws, back shoulder throws were his favorite, a couple of his favorite throws with Pittsburgh. But the one thing that was very evident to me was his intermediate passes were very inaccurate. Anything over 10 yards was not accurate. Throwing over the middle of the field was not really something that the Steelers did. And, a little bit had to do, I'm imagining some of it, maybe a good portion of it was, the lack of faith that they might have had in Kenny Pickett and throwing over the middle of the field. But in watching him against Philadelphia, I mean, he looked exactly like he did in Pittsburgh. I mean, I don't remember what his final stats were, but he had like 18, somewhere in the mid-teens completions for like 80-something yards. And any pass attempt over 10 yards he was 0 for 4. And again, I mean, he struggles with his accuracy, which is something that I really found interesting because during, one of the things that he had was accuracy coming out of Pitt. But I'm imagining, having to look deeper into the numbers, he just does not have that, that type of accuracy to throw more than 10 yards and have enough of a completion success rate to have multiple attempts over 10 yards. And he was 0 for 4.
Yeah, and in this league, you can dink and dime somewhat, but once the defense is like, oh, we don't have to play 30 yards back, we just need to play the first 10 yards.
Yeah,
you've kind of eliminated so much potential for an offense. And Kenny Pickett could potentially in the future be a game manager to where he can move an offense because he moved the Eagles down the field.
Yeah,
but again, it's not very realistic when you're playing against actual defense, actual starters. That stuff isn't going to fly too long.
Yeah, and he actually does a decent job of passing, rolling out. They didn't do enough of that with him, and again, I think it really depends. Maybe if he had a more consistent offensive coordinator, somebody with more NFL experience. That's the one thing that the Steelers did this year that I was happy. Arthur Smith might have his warts as a head coach, but as an offensive coordinator, he's been very successful. I mean, you'd look at the two previous offensive coordinator for the Steelers. None of them had NFL offensive coordinator experience. So when you put that together and you put a young quarterback, again, the Steelers did not do him any favors.
Right.
But also, you're seeing him in his first preseason game, and there's been talk in camp that he might lose the second, the backup job. We'll see. But again, there was nothing. I mean, I saw every snap he had against the Eagles on Friday night or Saturday, yeah, Friday night, and nothing changed. He's the same player he was last year, same player he was the year before. And we'll see if he can make anything with the Eagles.
Yeah, and it's interesting because in preseason games, especially one where Kenny Pickett, he's got another year after this on his contract, or is this his final year?
Yeah, this would be. I mean, this is year 3 for him,
So
he'll have another year,
and the option,
and then the Eagles, I'm sure, will decline the fifth year option.
So
he'll have this year and next year with Philly.
Right, and I mean, they're set with Hurts, obviously, but in preseason games, like I'm okay with mistakes because you want to see what quarterbacks can do, but it's almost like, I mean, they gave him 4 opportunities to throw the ball down the field, but to me, they should have really tried to make him do it 9 or 10 times.
Yeah,
the whole point of preseason, yes, you want to see what the roster can do, but to me, you really want to see the deep throws. Like that's why it didn't make sense to me that they did just so many dink and dunk passes because 95% of the quarterbacks in the NFL can do that already. So it didn't make much sense to me. Throw them out there a little bit, let them sling it a few times.
And I think that's where, again, I question, one of the strong aspects of him coming out of college for the Steelers was his leadership, 5-year starter. But in all honesty, I thought, he's the one that asked for the trade. And unfortunately, good, bad, or indifferent, Philadelphia is not going to see him the same way that Pittsburgh would see him.
Right.
Pittsburgh drafted him, and he would have had more opportunity. He could have sat back, learned a year, get a year under his belt under the Arthur Smith offense as as Russell Wilson's backup. Get an opportunity to compete, in camp.
Yep.
And he probably, if they had a lot of faith in him after 1 year, they weren't going to probably re-sign Russell Wilson after the year, and it would have been Kenny Pickett's team, a year sitting, learning the Arthur Smith system. Being able to go in, if Russell Wilson got hurt, he would have gone in as the backup. If he would have played extremely well, Russell Wilson probably wouldn't have gotten back in there because he's on a 1-year deal on a veteran minimum. And the Eagles situation is totally different. The Eagles have a 6th-round draft pick invested in him.
He's not a first-round pick to the Eagles. He's a 6th-round pick.
And exactly. So, I mean, they would have had more patience with him in Pittsburgh. He would have had more opportunity, and he would have had another shot at this. He would have had another bite at the apple. But sometimes egos take over. Sometimes emotion takes over. And him asking for a trade, I thought was, in my opinion, it was immature. I'm not sure what other people would think, but I thought it was immature from his aspect because I think he still could have had a career even as a starter in Pittsburgh if he was able to progress and develop.
Absolutely. And we talked about that last week, actually, in episode 1 of the podcasts that we've done. What is the situation for Pittsburgh in the future at quarterback? There's a huge question mark after this year. Obviously, Russell Wilson comes in and does great, and Kenny Pickett was still on the roster. Maybe there's more questions, but if Russell Wilson was a B-tier quarterback or less, they're going to roll with Kenny Pickett because he's cheaper. He's still got that last year on that deal. You can pick up a 5th-year option. And all Kenny Pickett had to do was sit the bench this year and learn, and it would have been his team again. Yeah. And that's, to me, he blew. I hope it was. I mean, it sounds like it was ego. We don't know. We're not there.
Yeah, we don't know. Yeah,
but
it was reported that he's the one that asked for the trade.
Right. That was
the Steelers had no intention of trading
him.
And the moment Justin Fields became available and Kenny Pickett asked for a trade,
it was.
And that's when Omar Khan said, "Well, then that's fine. We'll pull the trigger on him."
Yeah.
Basically, paid the same compensation to get Justin Fields that he gave up on Kenny Pickett, and it was a 1-for-1 trade. And I'm sorry, talent, overall talent, and overall ceiling, Justin Fields has over Kenny Pickett. Good,
Absolutely.
better, and
Yeah.
different.
Yeah, and that's I just hope nobody was in Kenny Pickett's ear being like, you need to get out of here.
Yeah,
Because that would, if that was somehow in his management, his family, or something like that, probably cost him millions of dollars.
absolutely.
Because Pittsburgh, if he played well in camp behind Russell Wilson, did good with Pittsburgh the next year, he would have been the next $55 million quarterback.
He could have been.
And now he's going to be bouncing around teams, and that's really,
For
it's going to be hard to get a contract like that now.
and for a team that who drafted you,
Exactly.
who
Yeah.
drafted a number one pick in you, they knew who you were. You were in the same building. I just think it was very. I don't think it was a wise decision by him. And only time will tell. But if
Yeah.
he ends up being cut by the Eagles at the end of the year, or he's just a stays as a number two quarterback and doesn't ever have a chance at number one, to be, to me, that's an opportunity that he would have had in Pittsburgh. No doubt in my
Absolutely.
mind.
Yep. Well, unfortunately, he made those decisions,
Yeah.
but hopefully it works out for him. I don't think anybody, even Pittsburgh fans, I don't think anybody has ill will towards him.
No, I don't.
Everybody wants him to succeed at some point in
Yeah.
time, but obviously he needs to sit and learn a little bit.
Right. And so what you mentioned at the top of the show is not getting your expectations up, right, about preseason.
Yep.
I fell for that last year. Kenny Pickett looked like a world beater in preseason football. He had like almost like a perfect passing rating. And I won't fall for that again. So when when watching preseason this past weekend, it was good to kind of see. To me, I look at things through a different lens now. I don't look if a quarterback sustained a drive and scored a touchdown. Mm-hmm. I kind of look at one-on-one matchups. I look at the decision making. I look at accuracy when they were throwing the ball. I look at how they do with one-on-one matchups, especially offensive line when they're blocking, pass pro, run blocking, like individual matchups, accuracy from a quarterback, defensive technique, no penalties. Kind of those are the kind of things I look at now when I look at preseason. Yeah. I really don't look at scores or scoring drives or stuff like that. Because I just know from, like I said, I was duped last year. But most of these teams in training camp, in preseason, they're playing vanilla defenses, vanilla offenses. Mm-hmm. It's simple play calls. Defenses are not they're not blitzing. They can't touch the quarterback.
Yeah, they can't touch
in training camp. In preseason, they're only in for one drive, and they're they might have the starters in there for one drive, but there's no blitzes. It's just standard, either zone defense or man to man. And a lot of times it's zone from what I've seen,
right? Yeah,
because they want to see these players if they're able to play smartly, play within their assignment, if their assignment sounds, to see if they can make the cut, right? So while we'll talk about the Jags, the Steelers, and we'll kind of go around the league, mm-hmm. I look at it now a little bit differently. Just things that are actual tangible that can translate from training camp and preseason over to the regular season.
Yeah, so with that, we'll go right into, I guess, segment 2. We'll talk about the Jaguars. You guys know I'm a big Jags fan. I've been really following the team closer this year. I followed them pretty close last year, but this year I'm following them on a different level than I did last year, mainly because last year the Jaguars made very little contribution to the team from a free agency standpoint. They added Calvin Ridley, and that was it. I mean, they had the draft class, but there was no eye-opening names on the draft class. This year, they go in, they take Eric Armstead, they get Ronald Darby, they get Darnell Savage from the Packers. On offense, they're getting Gabe Davis. I mean, they really revamped Mitch Morse from the Buffalo Bills. It's a bunch of new players on the team, and I think that's probably why I'm really focused. I think they did a good job with the needs of the team. I think they addressed those pretty well this offseason. But my first takeaways from the actual preseason game was our special teams unit looked very good.
Mm-hmm.
And to add to that, I do understand that teams are not showing their hands with the new kickoff rule. They're pretty
Yeah.
much taking it, running it right up the middle. Parker Washington had the longest kickoff return of the first week of the preseason. I think he took it almost 70 yards on the very opening one that they got. And then Trevor Lawrence came out with the offense. It was a 20-yard touchdown drive, but it was good to see. We struggled in the red zone last year a lot. I do think the additions of Brian Thomas Jr. And Gabe Davis are going to tremendously help with that. But I do still have two concerns with the team. I think they operated well. One, I did not like the offensive line on the run game. Travis Etienne, I think, ran 3 times and got 1 yard. I don't think that's a good showing, considering Chris Jones did not play for the Chiefs. So their best defender was out, and you still couldn't move the line of scrimmage. And then my other worry, and they didn't really show it in this preseason game, we've got a new defensive coordinator that's going to do a lot of man coverage. And we struggled in the first drive to keep up with the receivers. They got to the 20. We ended up holding them to a field goal, but I didn't love that. Other than that, I think they did really good, executed. There was no stupid penalties, like we were talking about earlier, what to look for kind of deal. And we stayed healthy. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, those were the big takeaways.
Yeah, I do notice. I mean, it's valid that you said about the concern about the run game, but I think just like, I know we'll cover the Steeler game, but it also happened in the Steeler game, at least the first team, a lot of times it takes a little bit for the offensive line to gel, and especially since you've got a new center.
Yeah, that's a big thing.
It's a big thing because if you're doing if you're running plays, if it's a trap running play, mm-hmm. That you've got the guard coming over. Yeah. And if the center and the guard haven't worked a lot together, there could be some assignment confusion. But from what I saw from the Jags, I did like their physicality that they
very physical.
They were very physical. I think this new defensive coordinator is showing is already putting an imprint on this defense. Yep. I definitely think that I saw more aggression out of them. I do watch a lot of Jags football. Mm-hmm. If they haven't played the Steelers, I do root for the Jags, just because they're here, and eventually I'll the more we go through the season, I'll tell the story about how I met my wife. Yeah. I mean, not how I met my wife, but how my wife and I got together. It was actually at a Jags game, is where that started. So the Jags, I do kind of like watching the Jags play. I do think Trevor Lawrence is on the cusp of being a really good quarterback. I think this year will be a year where there's that opportunity to take that next step. Mm-hmm. But I did like what I saw from the defense, because at times I felt like the defense played more laid back. And I think when Marrone was here, coach, what was the coach that won the playoff games? Doug Marrone?
2 years ago, or like before? Oh, that was Doug Peterson still. Before. In 2017 was Marrone.
I felt like that was the defense. That defense had swagger.
Absolutely.
They were a defense that when they got on the field, they were like, we're going to take it to you.
Absolutely.
And I felt like they haven't had that. And I felt like, and again, first preseason game, I'm not going to make much into it, but I just felt like you could see their physicality was a little bit more. And I think with, Josh Allen as one of your pass rushers, I do love that acquisition from the 49ers.
Yeah,
he is
Eric Armstead.
Armstead's a great addition that's going to help. Is even going to, I think, help improve Josh Allen. I think he has an opportunity to have 20 plus sacks this year with a guy like Armstead in the middle. So because now you have to focus on him too. There's additional focus. So I did like that offensively. Other than the running game, and again, I'll start putting more stock in that in opening drives, like second and third.
Yep.
Because after the third, the next game is the first regular season.
You better have. You better have some juice.
You better have the juice ready and in the running game. But it being the first game, and usually the offense doesn't get that many turns with it.
Right.
I think they'll I think they'll look better.
Yep.
And they have that other running back that's going to help take some of the load.
Tank Bigsby. He had
Bigsby.
an amazing game.
Yeah, I like him too. I think he's going to help take some of the weight off of ETN and have like a 1-2 punch.
Yeah.
In the running back, because I definitely think that they missed that 1-2 punch when they had kind of give me a refresher that the undrafted free agent was
James Robinson.
James Robinson,
yeah,
who was a really good running back for
until
that
he got
time
injured.
period. And I think that's gonna the more the running game can be an asset for Trevor Lawrence, it's gonna help. The passing game will help set up the running game.
Absolutely.
Where for the Steelers is going to be the other way around. The running game will set up the passing game.
Right, and see that's something. Last year, Trevor Lawrence had an underwhelming year. A big part of it was injury. But when you look at the offensive side of the ball, Travis Etienne couldn't get going. I think his Tank Bigsby, his backup, averaged 2.6 yards a carry. And every time he touched the ball, any Jags fans that's watched the game, every time he touched the ball, the world fell apart. He would fumble. He would tip the ball up in the air and it'd be an interception. This year, from the training camp videos that I've seen in the preseason week 1 game, he looks like he's gotten that under control. And one thing I'll say about him as well, the awareness. Again, very first game of the season last year, Tank Bigsby had the ball. Trevor had thrown it or something and it bounced off the ground and he picked it up. The whistle didn't blow. He thought it was a dead ball. And a Colt came up and ripped it out of his arms and took it for a touchdown. Tank was running with, he had somebody was chasing him. He was running full head of steam, and I watched one play in particular. I'll try to find it and do a TikTok short on it or something. A defender was coming, and I watched him switch hands. That shows me he's been really working hard because he didn't do that last year. He'd get popped, and he's trying to stay up to get that extra yard, and I do appreciate that out of a running back. But it's like when you're fumbling because of it. But watching him switch hands when he saw a defender coming up, that told me they've been working on it.
Yeah.
So
absolutely,
that was good. And like we were talking, I saw enough that I do think that the team is taking it seriously. They were 1-7 in the last 8 games of the season last year, and I think they're taking it very seriously. We can't let that happen again. We have to pedal to the metal, and then on the defensive side of the ball, we need to be physical. And I think that's, like I said, with the defensive coordinator coming in, Trayvon Walker, you drafted him first overall. I think he can be great. I disagreed with the pick when it happened, but now that I'm watching him play, I understand the pick now. Last year, he was dropping into coverage. You don't need him dropping into coverage. He should be going after the quarterback every single time. It's like one of those things. TJ Watt can cover.
Mm-hmm.
You want him going after the quarterback, though.
Absolutely,
it makes the most sense to have him going after the quarterback, and that's what I think Ryan Nielsen is going to have him with a fist in the ground, pushing the quarterback. And with the addition of Eric Armstead, this duo had 27.5 sacks last year. Josh Hines Allen, sorry, he changed his name, and Trayvon Walker. They had 27.5 sacks last year, and that was without an interior defensive lineman like Eric Armstead.
Mm-hmm.
And even if Eric Armstead comes in and only gets 4 or 5 sacks, you will see the production increase from Josh Hines Allen and Trayvon Walker, because when you get a record like that in the middle, it only helps.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and I do think finishing 1-7 was I know difficult for Jags
absolutely.
fans to deal with. They just sometimes things just continue to happen.
Yep.
The coaching staff, I'm sure, is going to put a big emphasis on changing things up this year. But yeah, I definitely think in watching the first preseason game, I think some foundation was built there, and we'll see if they can continue to add to that as the preseason games go on.
Yeah, and then the final thing I'll say about the Jags, and then we'll go on to segment 3, is Brian Thomas Jr., out of all the rookie wide receivers, he made the most impressive catch. Now, I don't judge the performance based off one catch, but I do think it showed me that we will have a downfield threat this year, whether it's him or Gabe Davis, because last year we lacked it, and this year that and I one thing I'll add to that because that's not the only thing I'm going to say actually. I'll add to that having a deep threat is going to not just be awesome to see. You know, I'd love to see Trevor Lawrence sling it for a 50-yard pass. I didn't see him much the past 2 years with him. It's going to open up so much for Christian Kirk and Evan Ingram underneath and Travis Etienne underneath. When you've got to have your safeties back because Gabe Davis or Brian Thomas Jr. can torch you, you're going to have a lot underneath open, and also with the running game, the screen game. There's just so much that can open up from that kind of vertical threat.
Especially Gabe Davis, because
Yeah, I mean, we saw what
Buffalo,
he could do.
yeah, in Buffalo, he was Josh Allen's number one deep threat. I mean,
Absolutely.
Stephon Diggs was, the X
Yeah,
receiver. I mean, he was Stephon Diggs is a great route runner. So, but I mean, he did have some long pass plays, but usually when he was going those verticals, it was
yeah.
Gabe Davis was one of his main targets.
Yeah, he you would see games with Gabe Davis. He'd have 200 yards. And you're like,
Yeah,
how the hell does he have 200
yeah. As a
yards?
Steeler
Yeah.
fan, I don't want to see Gabe Davis anymore.
Yeah.
I got enough of Gabe
I,
Davis.
I actually remember it was last year, right, where they had that one like 90
2 years ago.
Yeah, it was like 90 plus yards.
Yeah, it
And
was
I was
one
like,
of,
oh geez, yeah.
it was the first year of Mitch Trubisky.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was tough to watch.
So that'll move us on to segment 3, Steelers football. Got to see Justin Fields and Kyle Allen.
Yeah.
No Russell Wilson, but we'll talk about.
He's coming along slowly. He's got that calf injury. The Steelers are just protecting him from himself. I mean, that is, that
Russ wants to be out there, but
Russ wants to be out there, but the Steelers are not rushing him. They want to make sure that he's healthy. I don't blame them. But I know we talked about this last week. But if anybody hadn't, and this is why I said what I said last week. If any of you watched this first preseason game, in that opening, I don't know if it was the opening drive, that it was both fumbles took place on the opening drive, or it was one in the first and one in the second. Those are the kind of things that Mike Tomlin will never put up with. Something as routine as center to quarterback delivery under center is something that Mike Tomlin will just not put up with. I mean, if it was just one fumble, it's one thing. But in training camp, it's happened in training camp, and then it ended up happening twice. Did the Steelers turn the ball over? No, but they were extremely lucky that it wasn't 2 turnovers. And why I feel like that is everybody talks about, Justin looked good. He was he only had one incompletion, which was actually, or two
a completion, yeah,
which was actually a completion. But even that, I'll get into. I'll ramble on that here in a minute. But something as if those 2 plays actually turn into fumbles, those were snaps that the offense would not have been able to continue having snaps during preseason when it's 3 games only. And that is something that Mike Tomlin just does not put up with. I mean, he calls that JV football, and if you can't get something as rudimentary as a snap under center, you can't, and you have 2 fumbles in 1 quarter, that is just not acceptable. So if anybody thought that I was just saying it doesn't matter what Justin Fields does, that right there has been part of Justin Fields' issues in Chicago and why it led to him being traded for a 6th-round pick. It's not the talent, because the talent is obvious all over the field.
Yeah.
His athleticism and his arm, I mean, they're both off the chart. I think he's a very smart quarterback. I think he knows where to throw the ball. But sometimes, Ian, you and I talked about it off air, that sometimes he stares receivers down. It's making the routine is something that he hasn't been able to do. He's been a turnover machine the beginning of his career. It's gotten better, but it's still not there. And you can't fumble two
Absolutely.
times something as simple as a center to quarterback
Yep.
handoff under center. It's not even you're not even in a pistol or shotgun formation.
Yep.
It's not a bad snap. It's one of
And
those something
that
simple.
was the backup center, so they should have a.
No, actually, it was Nick Herbig who's the starting center at the
Okay,
moment.
okay,
So he's
that's
been
different.
working with Nick Herbig
Yeah,
as the starter in camp.
that's true. So that should be
Exactly.
seamless.
Exactly. So that's why I say, and while Justin Fields, he played, he showed a couple of nice sidearm throws.
Yeah, absolutely.
One to Najee Harris, which was a screen, halfback screen, which the Steelers have been terrible over the years with in the last few years. Wide receiver screen to George Pickens. He made a first down. Both of those side throws were first downs thanks to the yak after that between Pickens and Najee Harris. The pass he threw a beautiful pass, to Van Jefferson.
Yeah.
That was a 20+ yard completion. The one that he threw that was called incomplete, he threw behind Van Jefferson.
Yeah.
It was behind him. It didn't have, was it a catch? Yes. Should have Tomlin challenged it? Yes. Tomlin is already in rare form with his challenges because he should have challenged that. There would have been a completion, but it didn't even have to come to that. If the throw was on target, it would have been an easy pass and catch. With the timing, Jefferson would have caught it easily. He would have kept both feet in bounds, go out of bounds, next play. But again, these are some of the things why I continue to tell you, why I continue, and I'll continue to say this as the next week and the week after it comes around. That's the reason Russell Wilson will be the starter. If Russell Wilson is healthy, he will be the starter. And I just think right now they're giving Justin Fields an extended look to see if he's somebody that they are going to want to try to re-sign. I don't think they'll get anything done. Omar Khan has already said that he doesn't expect the contract to get done before week one. The Steelers do not negotiate contracts once game one is on the books. There's zero contract conversations after that. They do not do any extensions. They do not do any contracts during the regular season. They only sign a player off the streets if they have injuries that they need to bring somebody, or they sign somebody from their practice squad to the 53 active roster. But I do not see them offering Justin Fields anything before into the end of this year.
Yeah.
But I think that's one of the reasons you're seeing that extended look. The Steelers know what Russell Wilson can do.
Yeah.
I think they know they have enough body of work of him where I think they feel comfortable of him being the starter. So that was that's what I had on Justin Fields overall. Again, I don't care that he only threw 2 incompletes and threw a touchdown and all that. That's fine and dandy. Again, like I mentioned, I'm not going to get duped like I did last year during the preseason. But I will say, I was concerned the first team struggled blocking. The one thing that Arthur Smith is known for is zone blocking, but I'm glad to see that he was open because the first running play was a trap play. The second one was a crunch play. So those are 2 non-zone running plays that were the first 2 calls, which that the Steelers, are more. That's what the Steelers have done more the last couple of years that have kind of given them some success running the football. Like last year, the reason they won all those games was the running game was really driving, was really gelling with Jalen Warren and Najee Harris. So I was concerned about Arthur Smith just being predominantly a zone blocking offensive coordinator, but it looks like he's taken some of the stuff that the Steelers, the offensive line, was successful with last year, with better players, in my opinion. The moment Zach Frazier came in, he looked really good.
Yeah, he did look good.
He looked like a road grader. The things I saw from him, his technique was good. He stayed on his feet. He wasn't on the ground. Those are some of the things. Troy Fautano, he got welcomed to the NFL. The Texans paid a lot of money for Mr. Hunter. And he is everything as advertised. He's a tremendous pass rusher. is criminally underrated as a pass rusher because he played in Minnesota and doesn't get a
Yeah.
lot of
Bad
pub.
defense up there.
Yeah, a lot
Yeah.
of pub, but the guy can rush the passer. But then Troy Faltano came back, and during the run plays, he did, went up to the second level in a couple plays. Um, so I looked at some of the stuff from the run blocking perspective was very good. I think Broderick Jones struggled again with some pass pro, which is a little concerning since it's his second year.
Yeah.
Um, but seeing the offense, seeing the biggest thing for me is watching the offensive line and defensive line for the Steelers because that is going to determine their success this year. They have
Mm-hmm.
to win in the trenches on both sides of the ball. They got to be able to run the ball and they got to be able to stop the run. They got to be able to dominate the time of possession. They got to be able to wear down defenses, and their defense needs to get off the field.
Right.
So
Last year they spent a lot of time on the field because the
yes, at
offense
the
would turn it
beginning,
over.
yes,
Or
at the beginning of the year they did. Towards the end of the year, when they went on that winning streak and made the
right.
playoffs, they weren't. They were one of the top teams. I think they were number one in time of possession after week 9.
Yeah.
So that those are the kind of things I saw. I was kind of it was a mixed bag. Once Kyle Allen came in, he's going to be the third string quarterback.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Steelers really like having
3.
a third string that has in stadium experience and success. Kyle Allen has been able to to be competent at being a
Mm-hmm.
game manager.
He made solid throws.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he did some solid throws. Again, he threw. The reason he's going to be the number 3 quarterback, even though on that final drive, I know it's asking a lot with a bunch of these guys not making the NFL that played in the fourth quarter. Probably only a handful of players on each side of the team
Yeah. We'll make it.
will be number 51 and 52 and
Yeah.
53 players on the team, right? But he lofted a pass right over the middle. Got intercepted.
Yeah.
But again, other than that, he made some nice throws. Had a nice command.
And he's a vet.
If
He's a vet.
he's a vet, and that's all you can ask for a third string quarterback.
Absolutely.
So defensively, I think they were fine. Corey Trice, who was their 7th round pick a year ago, they're great talent, but because of the injuries, he's had torn Achilles, ACL injuries, and of course, last year during training camp, he blew out his ACL again,
Mm-hmm.
which is the reason why he was a 7th round pick. But he's healthy right now. He came out there. He played really well. Um, he had a tackle for loss on the screen. He's long. He's athletic. I don't know what his speed's going to be after having all these knee injuries, but the man is long, and between him and Joey Porter Jr., they're like freakishly have this wingspan of a 7-footer. And that's something that the Steelers do covered in their in their um, in their corners, long, tall, athletic corners that they look for. So he looked good. I really think Keanu Benton, who's a nose tackle, I'm going to say it right here, right now. That guy is going to be a stud. He reminds me of Javon Hargrave when the Steelers had him. And Javon Hargrave was an excellent player for Pittsburgh. He didn't get a lot of pub, but he was, the heart and soul of that defensive line. And along with, Cam Hayward now has been that. But Javon Hargrave was an incredible talent. He's with the 49ers now. He was with the Eagles for a long time.
Oh, yeah.
So Keanu Benton, 2 plays in, he just took the starting center of the Texans and took him backwards both times. That's something that I really enjoy. He's if he has a second move to a pass rush, he can end up with 5 or 6 sacks as a nose tackle for the Steelers.
Yeah,
that's how good I
solid
think.
Year.
I think that's how good he can be. Ogunjobi looked good. He only played a handful of plays, but he had that burst. So yeah, I thought other than the 2 fumbles, which were very disheartening, the blown assignment on the touchdown by C.J. Stroud on the defense was the only explosive play they gave up in the game. So but it did cost them 7, and they lost by 6. So you know,
They tighten that up. Who knows?
they tighten that up. We'll see what happens. But um, you know, curious to what your thoughts were.
Yeah. So my big takeaway. Well, one of the players that really looked better than I thought, and I know he's a good player, was Van Jefferson. Actually,
Mm-hmm.
we talked about him. Like, if he's your number two, you're not really loving that. He made some solid catches. And if you guys can add another receiver, him being your third, you're in really good shape, in my
Mm-hmm.
opinion. He looked really good. And just the play calling in general, I know it's vanilla, but to me, the play calling looked better than a Matt Canada's play calling.
Like, yeah,
I mean,
I mean, to your point, they schemed receivers open.
yep,
I mean,
yeah,
what I told
yeah,
you that earlier. What a concept! That's what the NFL does
yeah,
now. The Steelers haven't done any of those
yeah,
things in the last 3 years.
yeah,
Everything has been based on talent alone
yeah,
to get receivers open. But yeah, I mean, to your point, I mean, I was happy to see what I saw with Arthur Smith. I
yeah,
loved it that the play action, a lot of
yeah.
play
Play
action.
action.
I gave you a great stat that they had more play action in this one preseason game that they did their entire time that Matt Canada was a coordinator for the Steelers.
That is,
They had four explosive. Actually, I'm sorry, that is incorrect. Let me correct. They had the more explosive plays in one preseason game
yeah,
off of play action pass than the entire tenure of Matt Canada. Think about that. And Matt Canada was the heck offensive coordinator for 3 years in
yeah.
Pittsburgh.
And we were saying that earlier. The best offensive coordinators don't have a lot of them do have talent on their team. Obviously, it's the
Yeah,
NFL,
it's the NFL.
but like you said, their job is to scheme people open.
Mm-hmm.
Again, watch the Kansas City Chiefs. Travis Kelsey will have 9 catches. You're like, how the hell does Travis Kelsey have 9 catches?
Mm-hmm.
How do you not have 4 people on him?
Correct. Yeah.
And that's what they do. They scheme guys underneath to cross each other, and then by the time 2-3 seconds is up, you're like, you got Travis Kelsey running up the middle with no one around him.
Exactly.
And that's, you pick people at the line.
Picks, rub routes.
Exactly.
I mean, that was stuff that was not happening in Pittsburgh.
And I saw that the first drive.
Yeah.
And again, I didn't watch every game last year for the Steelers. I watched quite a few because they were on a couple primetime games and stuff. I didn't see, obviously, Matt Canada wasn't creative enough, but Arthur Smith, he's an offensive minded head coach. Like you said, he's got a very nice resume. As much as you want to say his head coaching tenure didn't work out,
Mm-hmm.
some of the worst head coaches are some of the best coordinators.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You take away the head coaching responsibilities of some of these guys and just make them be a coordinator, they're awesome.
Yeah,
I
McDaniel,
mean,
Just McDaniels is one person.
exactly.
Right? Yeah,
Can't be a head coach, but
yeah.
if you Matt Nagy,
Yeah.
I mean, granted, he did have Chicago in a playoff situation with Trubisky at one point, but he's calling the plays from Mahomes, and Andy Reid is too, but he's got that offense clicking like crazy.
Mm-hmm.
You wouldn't want him to be a head coach, though.
No.
No. So it's just, I mean, I will give the Pittsburgh Steelers a lot of kudos, a lot of brownie points for saying we need to find an offensive coordinator that does it the Steeler way,
Mm-hmm.
the way they want to do it, the way they'll be most successful, because you ground and pound, randomly throw in play action and stuff, your defense is getting rusted up, and that's who you want on the field. Correct. To stop the other team, and it'll work out.
Yeah, and we're talking about the Jags. I feel like the Jags will use the passing game to open up the running game.
Yep.
Where with the Steelers, it's the other way around. Their running game will open up the passing game because that's their strength, is the running game. Mm-hmm. They rebuilt this offensive line. Andy Weidel did this in Philadelphia. He built that offensive line and defensive line. He's doing it in Pittsburgh the same way. I mean, the top draft pick last year, Broderick Jones, offensive tackle. This year, Troy Fautano, second-round pick. Zach Frazier, top center. Yep. And then they go back in the fourth round and take Mason McCormick, a guard who also had a fantastic game. He looked like a road grader out there. And I loved his technique. I think my biggest concern with Mason McCormick was, Pat Meyer is a very technique sound type of, he likes his offensive linemen to be able to do that punch,
Mhm.
and their hand usage, uh, and I think Mason McCormick looked really good. I want to see more of that. I want to see. My preference would be to see Zach Frazier start at center in this next preseason game. I know they want Nick Herbig, who, Nick Herbig hasn't been like a top center. He knows he
Mhm.
can play center. The only reason he's in there is because of his experience in the NFL. But I think, put Zach in there. He's played the most snaps at center than any other player in college football, and he was successful in West Virginia.
Yeah.
So, and he looked great in his first action out there. After the two fumbles, they put him in there, and there was no issues.
They figured that out real quick.
That operation had no issues moving forward from there. So, I think that's what we need to continue seeing. Um, I would see what happens against Buffalo on Saturday.
Yeah. Well, we'll take this second to take a quick break and just let you know, here in Jacksonville, Sylvan Learning. We'll go ahead and do a little hashtag ad, actually. We'll have their links down in the description below. If your kid needs some extra help, very good programs they have over there. If you want to take a couple seconds to
Yeah, sure. We
bring that up.
do at Sylvan Learning. We do math, reading, writing, homework support, SAT, ACT. So we offer all types of services for from pre-K all the way to college. Really, all of our programs are uh, you know basically done for each child. They're personalized for each child depending on what grade level they're at. And we see a lot. We're very proud of our success rate to helping all the kids that are part of our Sylvan family. So yeah, if you need any, we have two locations. One in North Jacks in Dunn Avenue, 2255 Dunn Avenue, and we have one in Orange Park off of Kingsley Avenue. Um, and we're there 5 days a week, Monday through Thursday and Saturdays.
Awesome. So now we'll get into the third, um,
Fourth.
fourth segment. Wow, we are cruising. And we'll talk about a little bit around the NFL. We both kind of watched highlights, some of the games.
Yeah.
We peeked in on a lot of them. So first things first, I think the quarterback class looked solid.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, obviously preseason. We're not gonna.
Kenny Pickett looks solid. Kenny Pickett looks solid. I just want to say for the record, Kenny Pickett looked fantastic.
Yeah. Caleb Williams had a couple of really nice throws. He showed why he was the number one overall pick.
Yes.
He had one no-look like screen pass. I thought he was dead to rights, honestly. Dumped it off to, I think it was DeAndre Swift, and he took it for 50 yards. And then he had another rollout where he pump faked the defender and then threw it a sideline pass where they were able to catch it. And again, everything you wanted to see out of a first-round pick.
And we don't really prep before these meetings, so
we don't.
I'm going to tell you right now. You need to watch Hard Knocks. We need to watch the Chicago Bears Hard Knocks, because the first episode of Hard Knocks, it really focused obviously a lot on Caleb Williams,
Mm-hmm.
rightfully deserved. I think this kid's pretty awesome. I mean, it showed him how he was learning through his progressions,
Mm-hmm.
and during training camp, and the head coach. It was that first episode. He is a disciple. He was a defensive player for Saban, Nick Saban.
Oh,
so Nick Saban actually went to the Chicago Bears facility and kind of gave him some tips on how to handle Caleb Williams, and saying, I always stand behind the quarterback and telling him, hey, what are you seeing? What did you see? And you could see the head coach putting everything he learned in that conversation with that conversation that Nick Saban had with him, because Nick Saban was his head coach. The Bears head coach was a former middle linebacker.
Yeah.
That played for him many years ago before Alabama. So, but you could see he struggled on a couple throws. he kind of, you see his offensive coach talking to him. He says, "What did you see?" And he's like, "Okay, you had a misread. It was and you could tell he went back and said it should be this." And then as like the practices continued, you could see he's beginning to shine
Yeah,
offensively. I mean, his throws, his decision making. Again, it's training camp. We
absolutely.
got to
Yeah,
keep it
yeah.
within perspective. But you just start seeing, why this kid was a number one pick.
Mhm.
He's very talented. He's very coachable. You could tell his teammates already love him.
Yeah, they do. Yep.
And you kind of see that even the quarterbacks, you can see the chemistry he's got with the other quarterbacks. During the Hall of Fame game, they showed him, being like rooting for his fellow,
Yeah.
you know, um, for his fellow quarterbacks in the room, and how excited he was getting, with some of the throws and how the game was progressing. Right, I didn't get a chance to watch all of the Hall of Fame game, but
Hmm.
after watching that episode, I felt like, okay, now
Yeah.
I kind of know what happened. But I'm really looking forward to seeing all these Hard Knocks episodes, to see his development behind the scenes, as much as behind the scenes you can get.
Hmm.
But I mean, and I watched some of the Bears game. I wanted to watch his snaps,
Right. Yeah,
and
I paid attention to those.
yeah, I mean, and there were very little pre-snap
Yep.
penalties.
Yep. Commanded the huddle.
Commanded the huddle. Some really, like you mentioned, some really
Awesome
awesome
throws. Yeah.
throws. So again, I'm not going to get duped, because
Mhm.
I'm going to keep on saying this the next 3
Yeah.
weeks.
Yeah.
I got
We're
duped
not getting
last year. I got duped last year. I'm not going to get duped this year. And you'll know what I mean. And it doesn't necessarily just preseason. When it comes to my fandom with the Steelers and in general, I'm not going to get duped until something
Yeah.
actually happens, and we'll get to that last on our agenda today. But I liked what I saw of Caleb Williams a lot, and I know the other two quarterbacks we want to talk about are Bo Nix and JJ McCarthy, but I mean Caleb Williams to me really showed why he was
Stood
number
out.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah, why he's the number one pick, and I'll be curious to see his development. I'll be curious to
Yeah.
watch his highlights. I'll watch as many Bears games as I can.
Hmm.
My cousin is a huge Bears fan. I know that you know, he's going to be watching with a lot of anticipation. But I think there's a lot of, if you're a Bears fan, you got to be pretty excited about what the future looks like right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the Bears, they've gone a long time without a quarterback. I
Yeah.
mean, they hoped Justin Fields was it, and now they've got Caleb Williams. I'll say what I said when they drafted Caleb Williams. I don't think it's going to be a Caleb Williams issue. I really hope that they have the pieces around him, not on the field, but on the sidelines. I hope they've got the correct coaches there to develop him, because he has everything you want in a quarterback. He's got the mobility, he's got the arm, he's got the improvisation. He's got it all. I mean, you just got to develop it,
Mm-hmm.
because you've had some really great quarterbacks not get developed. I mean, a very good example right now in the NFL is Geno Smith. He was playing for the Jets. They pretty much completely wasted his first 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
And now he just took Seahawks to a playoff last year,
Yep.
And I think you'll see the same with Sam Darnold this year in Minnesota. We'll talk about him now with JJ McCarthy. He had a good showing.
Mm-hmm.
He had a real. If you didn't watch the third quarter of this game, it's actually the only game that was televised for me, so I was kind of forced to watch it. But they had
because it's football. We're going to
right. It's on the TV. If there's a football game on, it's on the TV.
That's right.
But Justin Jefferson was in the not on the. He was on the sidelines, but he was. They were doing an interview for the entire third quarter with him. They started off slow in the first and second quarter, but in the third quarter, he was making every single throw. The defense looked awesome in the third quarter, and they were making jokes on the broadcast. Justin, you need to get on the mic more often, because you're doing awesome right now. And that was cool to see. However, he did get hurt.
Yeah.
He will be missing some time. He's got a meniscus. You've actually had
Yes.
the issue before, so you kind of know.
It's very painful. I had a torn ACL and meniscus at the same time, and even though you can continue to, once the inflammation goes down on a torn ACL, you can run, you can walk and run with no issue. You just can't do any, you can't do anything side to side
Hmm.
because the ACL, which really holds this part of the, it's right under the kneecap and it holds between your calf and and your thigh, right? That's what that ACL is that one ligament that holds this two together. The MCLs are the two ligaments that are right next to each other, which are the outer ones. That's why those are take only like 4 or 6 weeks.
Yeah.
When you tear an ACL, it's 8 to 12 months because you literally have to learn how to walk on your leg
Hmm.
again. But the problem with meniscus to JJ's injury is that it's floating cartilage in there, and if it gets caught in the middle, it's extremely painful. You can barely put any weight on your leg. I wasn't able to put any weight on my leg because I had a meniscus along with an ACL tear, and that made it even worse. So if it's a meniscus surgery only, he'll be back probably in about 3 to 4 weeks.
Yeah, and I mean that could be in time for the season, but
Right.
they've already said Sam Darnold will be starting. And honestly, this is what I was saying earlier. Sam Darnold, he's bounced around a little bit. But I really think if anybody can get the most out of him, it's going to be head coach Kevin O'Connell.
Yeah.
He's an offensive-minded head coach. I mean, look at what he brought the Rams to Super Bowl.
And look what he did with Josh Dobbs.
Yeah, exactly. Josh Dobbs looked like the next best thing.
He looked like a world beater for a few weeks last year.
So I think Sam Darnold's got a good head on his shoulder. He's bounced around a little bit as a backup, but I think he'll finally get the chance to show.
Yeah.
He was a first round pick too.
Yeah, exactly.
He'll be able to show the world why he was a first round pick.
Yeah.
And honestly, I would like to see JJ McCarthy get to sit the whole year, unless they're 0-11 somehow. Then okay, let's get JJ McCarthy some snaps. But
Yeah.
I would love to see JJ because he's very accurate. That's one of his things coming into the league. He's very accurate with the football. If you can just teach him the development side of things, like let him keep developing, let him watch game tape, let him get the practice reps and watch a quarterback do it, I think he could be really good in the next couple years.
Yeah. I do too. I think he's got that temperament of a quarterback.
Yeah,
I mean, it's really going to be, does he have the overall talent?
Yeah, it's a different league than college.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, he's is he a mobile quarterback? Yeah, he's a little bit mobile, but he's not Caleb Williams mobile.
Right.
He's not Justin Fields mobile. He's not that type of mobile quarterback. He does a lot of good things, but I don't think he does anything great. And so let's see what where his progression goes.
Yeah, luckily he's got Justin Jefferson whenever he's back. I mean, so that'll make up a little bit of that.
That definitely will. The other quarterback, which at the beginning, before the game, like 2 days before the game, was Bo Nix. And I wanted to talk about him because, a lot of people felt like Denver reached.
Yeah, a lot did, yeah.
He was, on the depth chart, he was ranked 4th on the depth chart. Again, I thought he looked pretty good. I wanted to see I wanted to see Denver play, mainly because I know the Steelers will be playing them the second game of the year. And I wanted to see what these new quarterbacks, again, preseason is, I'm not putting a lot of stock in it because
we're not getting duped.
Kenny Pickett looked like, a Pro Bowler in preseason. But he did make some nice throws. I thought he did everything you're supposed to do in a preseason game.
Yep.
And I thought he made some really nice throws. And again, that's what I look for in preseason: accuracy, depth of target. How does he do in intermediate routes? Because I'll be honest with you, I think the more quarterbacks I see play, a lot of quarterbacks can throw short, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people can do the West Coast 5-yard dump, 6-yard dump, right? Some people have, Mason Rudolph, Russell Wilson is another example. They have very good deep balls.
Mhm.
right? They can heave it 60 yards, and put it like right in the breadbasket, right? But what I've noticed is a lot of quarterbacks probably struggle with that 10 to 12 yards middle of the field,
Yeah.
accurate throws,
Too much mustard
too much
sometimes.
mustard
Yeah,
sometimes, not enough. Yeah. So those are the quarterbacks that I think become the elite quarterbacks.
yeah,
The quarterbacks that can literally throw every pass on the field, i.e. Mahomes,
yeah,
unless you've got an offensive guru that literally schemes everything so wide
yeah.
open that anybody can throw the football in those scenarios. Um, so yeah, to me, that's I thought Bo Nix did some pretty good things, and Sean Payton is a very temperamental coach.
Yeah,
He expects perfection. Um, you
yeah.
know,
Old
uh,
school. Yeah,
he's old school, and so we'll see. But Bo Nix kind of got my attention in the first game. We'll see how the second game looks.
yeah, and that's not the set. So there was a couple others, Jaden Daniels and Drake May. I
Yes,
personally didn't watch.
I didn't get to see either one of them.
I watched one throw that the number two, the Commanders did. But like I said, I didn't. I'm not going to give my analysis on that.
Yeah, me neither.
Yeah, because we didn't
I
watch enough
I
of that.
will see more of Jaden Daniels in the
Absolutely.
second game, so
Yeah,
we'll be able to
yeah. We'll hop to them.
we'll give some love to them in the next one for sure.
Yeah, I personally, I would like to see these rookie quarterbacks get snaps. I do understand Caleb Williams is in a little different situation. It's very rare for a team to have the number one overall pick and be primed to be a playoff contender that same year.
Yep.
Again, you guys know the Panthers traded the number one overall pick to them the year before to get Bryce Young. So Caleb Williams was a factor of that. So Caleb Williams, to me, he should play a few snaps as a starter should, but he shouldn't be in the game for more than a drive or two because their playoff hopes are hinging on Caleb Williams. So, but the rest should absolutely. Yeah. Patriots are not going to be a playoff team.
No. Drake May, actually, I did see some of Drake May's snaps.
Yeah, he didn't play a lot.
He didn't play a lot. He had some nice passes, and again, it's preseason. You're good. These defenses are as vanilla as vanilla can be. These coordinators and head coaches making these decisions are looking for players that can, follow assignments, be assignment sound. They don't put anything exotic in there. They don't try to game plan for anything. They just want what the basics. Can they do the basics?
Yep.
And that's why they don't want to give anything away. Like they start to game plan. I think by the end of next week they start to game plan for the first game of the season.
Mm-hmm.
So everything is basically based on assignments. So that's why when I look at quarterback throws, especially during preseason, can they, I should have seen some of the incompletions that Kenny Pickett had during the preseasons because I spent so much time watching all the preseason games last year. Some of his incompletions were stuff down in the middle of the field, 10, 12 yards in the middle of the field, but he was
the throws you want.
The throws you want and the throws you need to be able to make. Yeah. Because every defense is going to take away what you're comfortable with.
Yeah.
You got to be able to do everything else, right? So that was the other thing. So for me, looking at that for them, that's to me is the most important thing. And I'm going to continue to look for that in all these young quarterbacks. Yeah. How accurate they are, especially in the intermediate routes and the middle of the field. Are they attacking the middle of the field?
Yeah.
Are they throwing it 10 to 12 yards in the middle of the field? Those are the things that I will start to look at. But yeah, I think we'll give some love to Drake May, to Jaden Daniels, to whoever else we're missing from the Penix too. I did see a couple.
Penix, yeah, he did. He actually, let's talk about that for a second. He had some really nice throws.
He did.
So we'll give him his kudos. Obviously, he will not be starting this year, probably not even next year, unless something weird happens. But he made some solid throws.
I will say it depends how much guaranteed money Cousins has in year 2.
So from what I read, it sounds like it's like a 2-year out kind of deal.
Yeah.
So like they kind of got to stick with him for 2, and then after that they can do something else with him. But and to your point about the game plan, and then we'll get into segment 5. The kickoff rule specifically, I really think right now it's super vanilla. I really think they're going to do some interesting things. I think
Yeah,
there's going to be
I did too.
endo rounds. I think you're going to see pitches
I
eventually.
did too. Yeah.
Because if you can get everybody to shift this way and you pitch it to somebody that goes the other way, that can open up a lot.
Well, I also think I think probably one of the things that is the thing that's probably getting overlooked the most in this new kickoff rule is that they have to kick it in the landing spot.
They have to, yeah.
Because if they don't, it
Yeah.
happened in the Steeler game. The kicker from the Texans kicker, who
Yeah, he squibbed it.
He squibbed it, and they ended up at the 40-yard line.
Yep.
So the landing spot is that is as
it's only 20 yards, right?
It's only yes,
yeah, it's
only 20
kick.
yards. You've got to put it in there. I mean, I talked about earlier about the center to quarterback exchange.
Yeah,
how that has to be, elementary basically.
Yep.
This kickoff thing has to become elementary in the landing zone.
Yep.
Because if your opponent starts at the 40-yard line and every single drive, that's going to be a problem.
Yeah, even a touchback is the 30.
Touchback is the 30, which is not ideal.
Or if it hits the end zone and comes out and you bring it back in, it's a safety.
It's a safety. Yeah.
So we saw that too.
Correct. So I think the landing spot's going to be really important. You don't want to kick it into the end zone. You have to make sure you kick it in the landing spot. It's going to be your best bet for the opposing team to start at the 20, between the 20 and the 25.
Yep.
If you can keep them to the 20 to 25, I think it's a win.
Yeah, and the NFL, I mean, I think it'll be until the end of the season before you can really judge how good or bad the new kickoff rule is. But it's making it more exciting.
Yes.
The kickoff, you could still be. That is true.
I'll say it's to remain to be seen.
That's true. We're not getting duped by.
We're not going to get duped because
Yeah.
I mean, in the XFL, it's okay.
Yeah.
But in this, again, the way it's set up, I think it's interesting. I think it's worth the chance. I mean, either way, it wasn't going to get much worse than last year.
Right.
Last year, pretty much every kick was basically almost the kickoff return got almost completely eliminated last year, except for some minor exceptions. So I think it was a good idea to go ahead and do that.
Yeah, I mean, like you said last year, you could still be making your chips and dip in the kitchen when the kickoff happened.
Exactly.
It was like we got another 30 seconds.
It was going to be at the 25 yard.
Yeah. So again, that was a good discussion on pretty much. And if you guys saw anything, leave it down in the comments below because I mean we missed things, and up until the next preseason games, I'll be watching highlights and different. Yeah. I turn on ESPN and stuff, so maybe I'll look into some of those throws and stuff that we might have missed.
Yeah, I'll be interested if anybody feels differently about the kickoff. Or any of the topics that we've discussed so far. Yeah,
and then we've got two kind of trade talks that we'll talk about to end the show. And the number one topic of discussion right now is Brandon Ayuk. We'll see if we're still talking about him next week, but for now, it's pretty much been.
It hasn't been August. It's been I used.
Yeah. He said
this is the month of I used.
And let's hope it ends soon because I don't want this to go on for another week. I hope it's done by this weekend.
Last week I said it. I still don't think it's going to happen. I mean, I think it's either the Steelers or the 49ers. I don't think there's not going to be another team.
No, yeah, that's it. Those are the options.
I think that has been ruled out completely. Obviously, before we jumped on today, reading a lot of different articles, like the 49ers are completely stunned that it's the Steelers or nowhere. They don't understand how the Steelers came to be as one of the, when the Commanders
offered a lot,
the Commanders, because obviously he's comfortable with Jaden, who was his former teammate. But look, I think, I said it before. I still think he stays in San Francisco, but if he does go to the Steelers, I definitely think it changes the dynamic. I predicted in the I kind of went out on a limb as a Steelers fan. I said they were the third best team in the division on paper. But I definitely think that Brandon Ayuk makes a difference on that. And I actually think they probably on paper are the second best team and very close to challenging for, the top team.
Yep.
Why do I think one player makes that big of a difference in a team sport like football? Well, the reason I say that is because one of the main reasons why I said that the Steelers had the third best roster is you have to always take into account injuries in a
Yeah.
season. And George Pickens is your top receiver. If George Pickens is hurt for any amount of time, the Steelers are basically don't have any receivers.
Hmm.
I get it. Van Jefferson has looked good during camp and preseason. Again, it's preseason and it's camp.
Yeah.
I'm not going to put a lot of stock into it.
And he's a vet that you've been able to watch, and he obviously hasn't
He
made
has,
that.
yeah, and
He's
he
not a
has
number one.
correct, and
So
he has talent.
yeah.
He's had injury issues. He fell out of favor with the Rams.
Well, that too. If he got hurt too, on top of it,
Yeah,
you guys
exactly.
are
So
really screwed.
right, so he's got injuries too. Scotty Miller, who actually had a good game
Mhm.
in preseason, but again, he's making catches against guys who are probably not going to be in the NFL. He played well when he was in Tampa Bay with Tom Brady, but then again, Tom Brady is
Yeah.
Tom Brady. But to me, those are the Steelers just don't have that receiver, and I feel like do I think consistently they could that if George Pickens gets doubled, do I really think that somebody like Van Jefferson, Scotty Miller, Roman Wilson, who's their third pick, who's been hurt, he got hurt the first week of training camp.
Mhm.
He hasn't been playing. He's a rookie, a third round rookie, who's not going to be, who's not ready to be a starting wideout. He's more of a a third receiver, a slot receiver more than anything else. Calvin Austin hasn't proven enough to me either yet. So you put Brandon Ayuk in that lineup, and now you can't have your safeties come to the box.
Mhm.
Now you have to worry about two really good, almost both of them are top receivers. I think George Pickens has potential of being a number one receiver, and Ayuk has already proven he's a number one receiver, has been a number one receiver with the 49ers. I know Deebo Samuel is a great compliment to him. Great. I agree 100%. No argument from me. Jawan Jennings, again, I think he's a really good quality receiver as well. But you put Brandon Ayuk in, that changes the whole complexion of the Steeler offense. You're not gonna be able to have a second safety in the box. Now that opens up the running game, which is going to be the strength of the Steelers. And I definitely think that the Steelers will be able to run the football. I think Russell Wilson will be able to be successful in play action pass. He's not going to be Russell Wilson from the Seattle days. He's 35 years old. Those days are over. But he's got great numbers. One of his strengths is play action passing. He has a beautiful deep ball. Both Brandon Ayuk and George Pickens can house plays, are both deep threats. And Russell Wilson has the arm he still has the arm for the deep ball. He's shown it in camp. That's not something that just happens in camp. You just can't you just can't turn that on and off. You have it or you don't have it, and he's got the accuracy on the deep ball. So does Justin Fields. Actually, I'm going to give him his credit on that too. So I don't. Everything in me tells me it's still not going to happen. I don't know why. I hope I'm wrong, but because I know the Steelers, all these years of the Steelers, these types of trades have never happened for the Steelers.
Right.
Does it mean it won't happen? I certainly hope. I hope not. I hope it does. But for me to actually believe it, I need to see it.
Yeah.
And then if I see it, then I can believe it'll happen again.
That's fair. Yeah.
But I've been a fan of this team since 1976. And
history repeats itself. And
they don't make these type of trades. Like the Minka Fitzpatrick was probably the biggest trade that they've made, where they gave up a number one pick. It was like the third or fourth game of the year, but it was a different circumstance. He was on his rookie year, and they had 3 years of more control over him.
Yeah,
it wasn't that they were trading for him and then turning around and making him a $30 million a year player. Like that doesn't happen in Pittsburgh. That happens in 29 or 31 other NFL teams. It doesn't happen in Pittsburgh. So to see it happen will be great. I would be over the moon. I would think we will, if it does happen, we'll talk about it and how that changes the dimensions of the team. I just gave a quick snapshot of what that would look like, but I think there's a lot more that Brandon Ayuk brings to the Steelers.
Mhm.
And but I have to see it to believe it. Everything indicates it's more likely than not to happen, but
Right.
I still
It
think
probably is 50-50.
I think yeah,
It's probably pretty close to that, a
yeah,
50-50 shot.
yeah.
Um,
I mean, Vegas has it 55-45. I mean,
yeah.
53.
That's kind of how I'm feeling with it. He could
Yeah,
go either
I
way.
think they've given the edge to the Steelers because since Friday they've been saying that they've reopened talks, and it's
Yeah.
Tuesday and nothing's happened. So they opened talks Friday, so Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. So it's been 5 days since they reopened talks, and every source are saying that the offer increased a little bit, but not a lot. And
Yeah.
they have to. And I don't blame the 49ers. They have to pay Trent Williams. They
Yeah.
have to pay Brock Purdy probably $60 million a year.
Yeah. That's the
You
thing. People think he'll get a discount. There is no discount.
not at quarterback.
Not a quarterback, because one, even if they were the type of person to be willing to accept a discount, the NFLPA will not allow it.
Mhm.
They want that position to keep going up. And for other players, Dak Prescott's coming up. Like
Yeah.
these guys, if you come in and you do okay, I'll sign for $45 million. You just screwed Dak Prescott. Like you can't. So
Right.
that's a position.
Yeah.
They'll always.
And I hear 49er fans are like, why don't they just give them the extra $3 million and all that? And I get it. Like that sound the
It
way
sounds.
that
Yeah.
it sounds easy, but San Francisco has a lot of money tied up. I mean, the reason they were able to dish out all these contracts, like Bosa, top player at his position, George Kittle, top player.
Yeah, when you really look at who they have and what they're paying.
Yeah, Debo Samuel,
Christian McCaffrey,
is high paid. Christian McCaffrey, yeah, top running back paid. Your middle linebacker, Fred Warner, top pay of his position.
Yep.
Like there is a salary cap, and yes, you can massage the cap.
Yeah.
You can, if you really want to sign somebody, you can. But the problem is when it comes to then going to signing other people, it does catch up. There is a catch up point.
You're seeing it right now in New Orleans.
Correct.
I mean, they've been one to do it. You watched it with the Rams.
Yeah, you can kick the can.
You absolutely can.
You could kick the can a little bit, but eventually, the reason they've been able to pay all these people now is because Brock Purdy is a
peanuts paid
quarterback. He's going to get $60 million.
Yep.
And they're going to have to give it to him next year.
They're not going
to be able to wait. I don't think in good conscience they can pay this man less than $1 million being the starting quarterback on the last year of a 4-year deal. Like he could say that that's not acceptable. Like he's already proven it, and the kid deserves it.
Absolutely.
I mean for everything.
NFC championships, multiple.
and I will say I was a Brock Purdy not sold on him a year and a half ago, but if you look at I've looked at some of the stuff in training camp.
Yeah,
his footwork, his demeanor. They're saying the way he's commanding the huddle now, like he's become the leader of that offense. Where I feel like the leaders of the offense maybe a year ago or a year and a half ago was, McCaffrey when he came in and George Kittle. Yeah. Because Brock Purdy was, the 7th round quarterback, the last pick of the draft, whatever.
What he wasn't the guy because you had Jimmy G still.
You had Trey Lance, right? You had Trey Lance. You had all those other things, but you make like they give Brandon Ayuk the money now. There is no Debo. There is no Debo next year.
Right, absolutely. You're risking one of your wide receivers is not coming back.
Right. So. Do I get that? They're trying to force his hand, to play this year because this is the Super Bowl window? That's fine. I mean, he'll, if they don't give him the money, if he can hold, and everybody say, well, he's got an accredited year. Yeah, as long as he plays by November, it's an accredited year. That's a lot of people think he's got to be there week 1. He does not need to be there week 1. He can be there week 8 and still get credit for the full year. And do you want a distraction?
Absolutely not.
For all that whole time, like I don't think he will wait until week 8, but I can see him. I can also see him not wanting to go week 1 or week 2.
Yeah, and then you also imagine they lose a couple games.
Yeah,
his value just skyrocketed.
Right, and so and then his trade value starts to go.
Yeah, now you
what you're
can't
getting
even.
in return is going to be
Yeah.
less and less.
You potentially lose out. Who knows what the Steelers are giving up? We don't know.
I mean,
There's rumors, but
the
you
sources
don't
are
really
saying
know.
second and fourth.
Right. But you start losing a bunch of games. Brandon Ayuk keeps saying he's going to sit. Now you've lost 4 games of value too.
Yeah.
Now, okay, you might only get a third and a fourth. Now it's like,
yeah.
And then if Brandon Ayuk keeps saying I'm not gonna go anywhere, you lost everything. You lose a receiver, you lose picks. It's a tough situation, honestly.
It's a very tough situation. So I definitely think we'll see some resolution to this within the next week.
Absolutely, yeah.
I think by the time we record
next
week,
it better be.
Yeah, I definitely would like for.
I'm about to mute the name Brandon Ayuk on Twitter.
Me too. I mean, in closing, Hassan Reddick also asked for a trade.
Yeah,
and the Jets shot that down. Like the GM sent a memo to, and basically said he's not getting traded. Not going to happen.
That's one of that. So to look at this situation in Brandon Ayuk's, it's kind of similar. So Hassan Reddick was traded by the Eagles premature, not on their case, but on the Jets. They should have had a deal worked out with Hassan Reddick when they traded him. And now you're looking why you can't just trade for Ayuk. You have to have a deal in place because you could potentially have the same situation.
Yeah.
Hassan Reddick can demand a trade. It doesn't mean it's going to happen. But if they would have had a deal inked when they traded you, it's a sign and trade. You just wasted a 3rd-round pick for Hassan Reddick.
Yep.
And you didn't even have the contract worked out with him yet. That's crazy.
Yep. And I think the Steelers are not going to make that type of mistake. I'm pretty sure.
Won't.
I mean, the Steelers have basically have said, that they're gonna that all the reports say that the contract's already done. That they've come to terms on the contract.
It's a yes or no from San Fran.
Which at the end of the day, I told you earlier before we went on air. They did the math. There's a couple things. When it comes to the math, one is the taxes is about $2 million more. So if he takes a deal in Pittsburgh for $29 million. It's like a $32 or $33 million deal
he'd need
in San Francisco, and there's no way San Francisco is going to pay him $33 million. So he's going to have to make the decision of that. But the cost of living in San Francisco is so much higher, and which is which I read earlier today. Basically, what he's making in Pittsburgh would. That same his cost of living and everything there would be the exact amount if he played in San Francisco. If San Francisco paid him $48 million,
that's insane.
A year, actually. Not just So I cannot believe there's that disparity. That this it's that much of a discrepancy in numbers, but most of it is in the housing market. A house there, a house in Pittsburgh that cost $1 million costs probably $10 million in San Francisco. So the cost of living in California is much higher. The taxes are much higher. Actually, San Francisco, there's like a jock tax in San Francisco that makes it even worse. So again, even with all that, I still think at the end of the day, I feel like he wants to stay in San Francisco. I think that's his first choice, but not enough money wise, not enough to say, all right, I'll take this hometown discount because again, he wants to be paid as one of the top receivers in the NFL, and he deserves to be paid as one of the top receivers. And
receivers don't always get the second chance.
Exactly.
So
this is his one and only chance to bite at the apple.
And that's kind of this will actually conclude the show here. When I was Calvin Ridley specifically, I was a little upset that he left, but then when I saw the contract, it was like 4 years, $100 million, and it's like he'll never be able to get that contract again. No. He's almost 30. Very rarely he'll be over 30 when the contract's over. You're not getting another $100 million contract when it's all said and done.
And I'm glad you brought up Calvin Ridley because there was actually Robert Kraft said that New England, the reason he picked Tennessee over New England when the money was the same was because of the taxes. In Tennessee, there's no tax. And in Massachusetts, is one of the higher ones.
And that was the same with Florida too. So that's why it was so shocking. But when we saw the deal, it was like, oh my gosh, he got paid no wonder you won that, you know. So
Yeah.
that'll be the same with Ayuk. You have to really, and it. A lot of people will say, "Well, they're millionaires. Who cares?" But I mean, think about it from your point of view.
There was a receiver, and we'll do some research in the next one. He actually showed his paycheck on
Oh,
TikTok.
really? Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
I
Yeah.
forgot his name, but he showed how much taxes were taken out,
And it's insane.
and he plays in California.
Yeah,
And
it's insane.
And I just cannot remember. If I don't know if it was, I don't think it was a 49ers. I think it was a Rams receiver. I'm not, or
I feel
a
like I know who
Chargers
you're talking
receiver. I'm not
It
sure.
was a Charger. I know who you're talking about. I'll look it up.
Yeah,
It's
and he basically was on TikTok and he showed his paycheck and showed how much taxes were taken out because he
Yeah.
lives in California, and and how much his check is. So yeah, of course, like that plays a
Yep.
big difference. And at the end of the day, I'm gonna give Coach Tomlin his props because he wants to play for Tomlin. He's got a connection.
that helps.
He wants to play for Tomlin. Tomlin's been a player's coach. There's a lot of players that would like to play for him. He's considered one of like the top coaches that players want to play for. And I think that has a lot to do with it too. So we'll see what happens. Next week we'll finally
We'll have an answer hopefully.
I think we'll have an answer one way or another. If we don't, we're gonna we won't talk about it. Yeah. I promise you we won't talk about it.
So if the headline next week is not Brandon Ayuk, we're probably not going to talk about it.
Yeah.
So.
If he's made a decision, we'll talk about it. If it's either way, if he stays in San Francisco,
Right.
what that means to the 49ers. If he goes to Pittsburgh, what that means for the Steelers. Because it's one of those two locations. I think he ain't going anywhere else.
Right.
We'll talk about, what it means to the 49ers to keep him, what it means to Pittsburgh to get him. But if nothing happens, we will pretend Ayuk doesn't exist.
Yep. That was today's episode.
Yeah.
Raphael here and myself, Ian. Leave a comment down below if there's a certain game you want us to maybe peek in on and get our opinion on. That was this episode of Around the Ball HQ. Thank you guys so much for watching. Peace.